Good evening, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started.
Right.
I feel like I'm starting a storefront church. Just small and intimate crowd, and thank you for being here tonight. So good evening, and this is our initial, or I should say inaugural, In Conversation program here at the North Carolina History Museum. So this is an inaugural program, so thank you for being here. You're helping me to make history. So thank you for being here tonight. Just a couple of reflective thoughts. In December of 1765, after taking his oath of office, one of the first official acts of Governor William Tryon was the formal acceptance of his duty for administering government and for securing the acts of trade and commerce and navigation. From our earliest conception as an original colony force for England by way of international markets and trade, that included rice, tobacco, some cotton a little later, lumber, and naval store stuffs like turpentine, tar, and pitch, to our development as a powerhouse for pork, soybeans, sweet potatoes, and peanuts. North Carolina's historical and current portfolio is quite phenomenal. Since the 20th century, in addition to our agricultural stance and trade, we have dabbled in and become quite triumphant in textiles, higher education, and research. There's no place quite like North Carolina in terms of our people's grinding history and our hopeful economic future. My name is Crystal Regan, and I'm the Executive Director of Tryon Palace, and I welcome you to tonight's program, In Conversation with Machelle Baker Sanders, North Carolina's Secretary of Commerce. It is Women's History Month, and I'm proud to have one of Eastern North Carolina's own join us tonight. She is a fierce advocate for women in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. That is STEM. So anytime you hear STEM, that's what that means. She's also a fierce leader in business and leadership, and she will be properly introduced in just a few moments. But before we start, I want to thank our partner for tonight's program, the New Bern Area Chamber of Commerce. The Commerce is celebrating 125 years this year. I want to introduce Mr. Kevin Roberts, president of the New Bern Area Chamber of Commerce. Kevin is a New Bern native. He's one of the last crops, as he calls it, of babies born in the St. Luke's Hospital. He graduated from Pamlico County High School. He holds business and economics degrees from North Carolina State University and has spent 16 years in banking, first in Durham, then in New Bern. He has been the executive director at the Chamber since 2001. He is married to Colleen, has 2 grown children and 2 grandchildren. Kevin loves the business of community building and has been fortunate to serve on a number of boards. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce Kevin Roberts, who will talk a little bit about the Chamber and then introduce our North Carolina Secretary of Commerce.
Good evening. Thank you, Crystal. Thank you so much, and thank you for allowing me to be a part of this evening. Welcome to all of you. Thank you for being here. So, commerce. This thing, commerce. We all talk about it. You deal with it every day. I've made it my life's work. Our guest speaker is here to talk tonight about it. Webster defines commerce simply as the exchange or buying and selling of goods, commodities, property, or services. The English economist Sir William Petty in the mid-17th century took it a step further when he declared that commerce changes the fate and genius of nations. Given all that, maybe all those different meetings that we're all constantly attending are not such a bad thing after all. From my vantage point, having been at the Chamber now 23 years, and having spent all of that time, plus my time in the banking industry, watching many of you people in the room and the things that you've done in this market, We are very lucky to have so many who care so much about commerce in this market, in our region. I do believe we are all very fortunate, not just for what we were given in living in this place, all the wonders that were already here when we got here, but also for the opportunity each of us has been given to add to it, to do our part, to push our part forward as best we can. You folks do a wonderful job at that. I tip my hat to each of you and thank you for your efforts and also for being here tonight. And now to our guest, who is the face of commerce in North Carolina. Secretary Sanders is a native of Belhaven, North Carolina. I had the pleasure of meeting her parents earlier, and now they're not in the seat that they were when I first met them. I know that I can't see them with the lights, but a graduate of North Carolina State University. I'm sorry, it was not her parents, it was Crystal's parents I met. My apology. A graduate of North Carolina State University, Secretary Sanders holds a Bachelor of Science in Biochemistry and a Master of Health Administration from Pfeiffer University. As a native North Carolinian and mother of twin daughters, she is passionate about improving the status of women in our state. She is a member of the International Women's Forum and On Board NC. Some of her work includes creating a Women's Innovation Network at Biogen and the Ladies Cardinals STEM program for high school students while at the North Carolina Department of Administration. After all, as Sanders puts it, improving the status of women in North Carolina is not just a woman's issue. It's a family, poverty, and economic issue. Secretary Sanders brings 30 years of strong management and leadership experience to commerce as a seasoned pharmaceutical and biotechnology executive, previously serving as Vice President of Manufacturing and General Manager of Biogen's largest manufacturing facility in the Research Triangle Park. She's also held leadership positions overseeing manufacturing, global quality assurance, and quality control functions at Biogen and Purdue Pharmaceuticals. As North Carolina's Community Commerce Secretary, Sanders serves on many boards and commissions, including the Rural Infrastructure Authority, the Board of the Economic Development Partnership of North Carolina, the NC Works Commission, the state's Travel and Tourism Board, and the Carolinas Pandemic Preparedness Task Force. Won't you all please join me now in welcoming Secretary Machelle Baker Sanders.
Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for being here, and thank you for that introduction, and congratulations on the 125 years to the Chamber. That's a long time, isn't it? A lot has gone on and a lot of change. And I'd also like to thank your Executive Director, Crystal Regan. I appreciate the opportunity to come and share with you tonight. It's a pleasure to speak to you, and happy Women's History Month. So I'm going to chat with you. I'll call it a chat because we're having conversations, and Crystal and I have more of a conversation later, just to reflect on women's history, also speak to you about New Bern and the Main Street and economic development in the region, as well as share a little bit about me, and talk to you about Department of Commerce priorities, and then concluding, and I think we're going to have a conversation and some questions. So we are celebrating Women's History Month this month, and how many of you knew, or do you know, the percentage of women in the state's population? Any guesses? Nobody?
More than 55.
55, more than half. You two are right. I wish I had the big prize to give you. Women make up 51% of our state's population. So ladies, we have a majority voice in North Carolina. And according to the Small Business Association, women make up nearly 48% of workers and over 44% in North Carolina workers. As early as this year, North Carolina was recognized as the second best state for women business owners in the 2024 Wells Fargo Impact Report, based on various services and various businesses offered to women, including access to financing, training, and marketing support. And at the Department of Commerce, we surely offer support, whether that's through workforce boards or our NC Career Work Centers, job fairs, and other support, not only to women, but to all the residents here in the state. But I did want to highlight that information. We want to support women-owned businesses, women workers, and our women leaders. Women are vital to our economy, vital to the state's economy and the national economy. And as I think you heard mentioned earlier, the challenges that we face are not women's issues. These are family issues. They are the state's issue and community issues, and all of our issues, because we're so interconnected together and a part of each other's daily lives. Now, New Bern Main Street has been a part of our Main Street program for a number of years, for many years to say that. This riverfront city has experienced tremendous success in the downtown area for over 40 years. And I have to tell you, I enjoy Main Street, because before coming here, I was looking for a certain shop and I bumped into Peacock Plum and decided that I'm going to have to try to do a little bit more on Main Street, or at least downtown New Bern tomorrow. And New Bern has experienced more than $336 million in public and private investment, a net gain of 183 businesses, and over 1,100 jobs, 259 building rehabilitations since 1980. So it's good to hear and to see the growth here. The nearby towns to New Bern, like Goldsboro, Kinston, and Morehead City, are also doing well in their downtown areas in the Main Street program, which is a program that is administered by the Department of Commerce. Goldsboro has had this program for over 40 years, and growth there, 227 businesses, and over 1,600 jobs, and over 458 building rehabilitations. Kinston, 36 years old in the program, and has experienced $78 million in public and private investment, a net gain of 209 businesses, and 212 building rehabilitations. And Morehead City has been in our program for over 23 years. Downtown Morehead has experienced $218 million in public and private investment, a net gain of 73 businesses and over 441 jobs, and 233 building rehabilitations. So this area in this region continues to experience economic growth and prosperity to many small businesses on the main streets. And the good thing about that is that the community and residents are surely benefiting from the growth of these businesses. Since 2017, we have announced more than $7.8 million in economic projects in Craven County. That's including either a 1NC grant, or you heard mention the Rural Infrastructure Awards, or our JDIG program for our larger competitive projects. Nearly 600 jobs throughout Craven County as a whole, which includes White River Marine Group expansion, which was a significant expansion in the area. So indeed, as the Secretary of the Department of Commerce appointed by Governor Cooper, this has been and continues to be a privilege and an honor to be able to have this type of impact on community and on the lives of the residents of our state. Now, my primary role is to be responsible, and I oversee the state's economic development, the state's workforce development, as well as the Department of Employment Security, and we also have a data analytics arm. And within each of those larger umbrellas are divisions and services that we provide to the over 10.5 million residents in the state. while being an advocate for North Carolina in recruiting jobs, expanding jobs, and also helping to double down on our workforce development. As you all know, that's needed. As you heard prior to coming to Commerce, a little bit about me, I spent over 32 years in the pharma biotech industry and enjoyed that, and then joined state government in 2017. And yes, I am a native North Carolinian. I am a native Eastern North Carolinian, or rural North Carolinian, and I am from the beautiful town of Belhaven, North Carolina. Anybody been to Belhaven? Oh, yeah, so you know how beautiful and wonderful it is. Beautiful Belhaven, North Carolina, where I'm looking forward to visiting our Main Street next weekend as I go home to visit Belhaven, North Carolina. So I understand deeply, and I care deeply, and I connect to rural North Carolina and to North Carolina. So understanding that the importance of Commerce's mission and also being aligned personally with that mission really makes it, I think, a great place to be and a great way to serve. Commerce mission is to improve the quality of life and the well-being of all the residents of this state. And so it is indeed great to work with communities like this community and like this region to do the work that I mentioned to you earlier. Having transitioned from the private sector into the public sector, I will share with you that there's some things that are very common and similar, and there's some things, as you know, that are very different and dissimilar. But I have assimilated for the most part. I still run into the potholes and the bumps of maybe thinking that sometimes I'm still in my private sector life. But I think I have a pretty high learning agility, so I kind of pick up, and some resilience, pick up and brush off and keep it moving as we rural North Carolinians tend to do. So I realize that it is important in any role of leadership or as a member of a team to be a good listener. That has transferred for me from my previous experience into this role, public service role, to focus on a common good. What is the common good, and what is the greater, bigger thing that we can align on that is bigger and better than either side of the table or either side of what an individual may think. We can collaborate and come up with a better, bigger solution. I've also intentionally been a fierce advocate for rural North Carolina because without that advocacy and without the services and the access that we need in rural North Carolina, where would North Carolina be, since we are the majority of the state? So I believe it's important to do that. And that same advocacy has carried over from private to public sector. In the private sector, those years were spent saving and changing lives of people with debilitating illnesses. And so I feel that it's very common to really do the same thing in a public service role. You're just doing it in a different way, a different reason, but yet that same purpose and mission, which is to improve the quality of life of the residents of this state. Whereas prior to this, improving the quality of life of many patients across multiple therapeutic areas. Also, one of the things another thing I was asked to mention about some of the similarities transitioning from private to public sector. I wanted to mention about leadership. And leadership is vitally important to everything, I believe, that's going to have a good outcome and result in what we do. How many of you consider yourself leaders?
Oh, you.
I'm glad to see most hands go up. And believe it or not, I believe all of you are leaders. I believe that leaders are people who have an influence and an impact on the outcomes of others and can bring out the best in others. And I think, how many of you are intentional about having an impact to bring out the best in your community here in this region? Everybody is, right? So we all have our place and our way that we can lead and that we can have an impact on the outcome of our community or of our neighbors or of our people around us. So I think it's important to accept that responsibility and accountability as a leader, because we surely can impact and influence in different ways many people, and sometimes with every interactions that we think sometimes may not be a big deal, but they are a big deal. Your smile, your handshake, your nod, your eye contact can save the life of someone who's struggling and debating within about whether to go on. That's the power of leadership and the power that we all have. It's also important as a leader to be comfortable in your own skin. Comfortable in your own skin with who you are, where you're from, what you're about. I think that's very important as a leadership trait, to be comfortable with that, recognizing that we all have differences and that those differences together make up a good thing, and to embrace those differences and to move on and leverage those differences to come up with a great outcome. So I have shared with you now, in case you lost track, so I've shared a little bit about women's history. We've talked about the economic development, some that has gone on in this area, in this region, and you've learned more about me, and you can ask more questions later. And I've also shared with you about commerce. And one of the things, back to the commerce conversation, that I like to talk to you about is workforce development. I think we have all seen or experienced the labor supply shortage. I can remember it was early on, maybe as we were getting through the pandemic, going to a restaurant, fairly large-sized restaurant, and there was only 2 waitresses in the entire restaurant. I thought, wow. But we kind of got accustomed to it for a while, right? I think we all became a little more patient with each other and patient with the services, or not. Some people did not. But we are all experiencing a labor supply shortage nationally for different reasons. Some that we don't control the reasons, like people are having less children, or immigration laws that we don't control. There's different reasons for that. But within commerce, we have made a decision to have an economic development plan for the state, and it's called the First in Talent Plan, kind of like North Carolina's First in Flight. It's called the First in Talent Plan. I accepted this appointment in the heat of the pandemic, and we recognized that after the pandemic, there was going to be a lot of change. We were going to need more than ever to find ways to re-engage our workforce and to get our economy back going. And so we have focused our strategic economic development plan on our talent. Also because our talent is our greatest asset in North Carolina and has set us apart from other states in many ways. So much so that North Carolina has been voted 2 consecutive years as the best state to do business in the nation. And I have traveled a lot of places, including internationally, talked to CEOs many days and almost every week. And the first thing and the consistent thing that they are looking for is talent. And North Carolina has really benefited from having great talent. This First in Talent Plan is grounded in a way that we focus on helping to remove barriers for people for many years that have had barriers, where we are working in a way to create greater equity and inclusion and diversity in our workforce. For example, we have a neurodiverse program that we have hosted people who have neurodiversity, who are neurodiverse for like autism or on the spectrum, and we work to get them employment. Our neurodiverse population is 86%, I think, underemployed. And so a lot of that is to make accommodations in the workplace, to have a greater appreciation for the diversity and the needs of this population, and to be inclusive in our workplace. And the outcome that we're hoping to get to, and we have gotten to, is to find employment for these people. We have also been working across the executive branch to double down on our efforts for a reentry program for people who have been previously incarcerated or people that have a previous justice record, to help them overcome the barriers when they reenter into the workplace and into our economy, so that they can engage and so that we can also increase our workforce in different places. You heard someone mention earlier about my advocacy and my passion for women in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and manufacturing, which is a field where women are underrepresented. And if we're going to solve the problems of the world and of society, which we will, hopefully solve those challenges, it is going to take all of us. It will not take a certain kind of person or one gender or one person from one region. It will take all of us, because that's where innovation breeds, and that's how we solve the difficult, complex problems, is having diversity of thought, perspective, gender, racial, ethnic diversity to solve the problems that we are grappling with today and in the future. Workforce development is vitally important to our economy. To fill the jobs, to do the work, to solve the problems, to help lift up our families and our communities, and to provide a quality of life for the residents in this state. And so this year has been proclaimed as the year of public schools. Education is workforce development. I think you'd agree with me on that. As we are educating people, we are developing them for their futures and for jobs in the future. North Carolina public schools, and before I conclude, I'm going to leave with this public schools conversation and how it connects to workforce development. North Carolina public schools are doing great work. The schools are strengthening our communities, strengthening our economy through preparing our students for the future. And we are seeing the highest of graduation rates in our state's history, with 87% of high school students graduating from public schools last year, despite coming off the heels of the pandemic and the health disruption. Strong public schools mean strong communities. And our students earned a record of 325,000 workforce credentials last year in the key areas of information technology, construction trades, healthcare, areas that are going to strengthen our local economy. In North Carolina, public schools is one of the top 5 employers in all 100 counties, including here in Craven County. Now, in addition to teaching students and creating jobs at our public schools and community hubs, we're serving our children, including children with disabilities or children with barriers, providing transportation and counseling, as well as school meals for some that rely solely on those school meals for their primary meal of the day. For the last 2 years, I mentioned to you that North Carolina has ranked first in America as the best state to do business. But we will not remain in that position if we do not focus and make sure that we are investing in our public education. We won't remain first if we become last in education. North Carolina currently ranks 46th nationally in beginning teacher pay. That's worse than Mississippi, Alabama, South Carolina, and Tennessee. And there is no state in America that invests less of its gross state product on education than North Carolina. As a matter of fact, this means we rank dead last. Now, I know we can do better. I think you know we can do better. I attended Bath Elementary through high school and in public education, and I believe I had a good education and one that positioned me to compete when I went to NC State University. And I think if you think about your education, I think you'd be surprised at this fact that I just mentioned as well. Would you? Would you think we are 46th And would you think we rank dead last, especially with the wonderful accolades that we just highlighted? So we must invest in our public schools and in our teachers and our entire system. I support education of any choice, however people choose to get educated. What I do not support is dismantling a core essential function of our community, which is public education, at the expense of taxpayers. Taxpayers living in rural communities, like where I'm from in Belhaven, we can't get vouchers because private schools in rural areas are rare. Nearly 1/5 of our state's counties have only one private school, or no private school at all. So instead of their tax dollars going to families in urban areas, it goes to families in urban areas who do have access to a broad range of ways on how students are educated, for many students, not just a few. And so North Carolina can do better, and we are better. We have proven through many times, and as recent as our worst of times through the pandemic, what we are made of when we come together and what we can do to have a positive impact on our communities, on our economy, and on the people. And because we did that coming out of the pandemic, we're all able to sit here tonight together and enjoy. And we can do the same thing when it comes to the future of North Carolina. So now is the time to let your elected officials know the good things that are going on in K through 12 education, the good things that are going on in our community college system and our university system, and the good things that our teachers are putting forward to help educate our children and prepare them for the future. To invest in education is to invest in our workforce development. And workforce development is essential and critical to the future of North Carolina. We have affirmed that North Carolina is resilient. We have shown the world that we are the best state in this nation, and I believe eventually we'll be the best state in the world to do business. And we will continue to do the great work that we're doing. Our state has transitioned. We heard Crystal mention the cotton that we used to have, or tobacco and the farming and other industries. It used to be the textile industry, and we still have the furniture industry. But we also now are recognized as the battery belt because of the hub of the EV clean energy space that we have created, that has created over 17,000 jobs in North Carolina and over $20 billion of investment. We are a hub for the life sciences sector, where we have gene therapy going on and cures for illnesses that are chronic and that are life-changing for people. We have welcomed in and ushered in a different economy, and one that is really leading the way. We have also ushered in a cleaner energy economy. The supply chain that feeds into the clean energy, the supply chain that feeds into the over $100 billion of offshore wind economy. So there's a lot of work that has taken place in this state because of people like you. We have transformed this state to be recognized for the great state that we are and for the potential that we have and that we can achieve. So I want to thank New Bern community, and I want to thank all of you. I want to say a special thanks to the New Bern Chamber and Tryon Palace, the North Carolina History Center, and for all of you for championing Eastern North Carolina. Just you being here tonight signals and tells me that you care not only about this community and about the success of Tryon Palace and all that it can offer, you care deeply about our state. And I think that's something that we all share and can all enjoy this beautiful state. Before I sit, in the spirit of Women's History Month, I want to acknowledge your dynamic executive director and her leadership that she brings to this facility and to this community. Crystal is a standout leader with a deep understanding of history, the political, the social, the economic, the technological, the religious, the cultural, the military, and the intellect that is found in the deep richness of the history of not only this state, but of our country and beyond. And so I want to celebrate her as well, being in this role. And hats off to all of you. I know that there are great things to come through working together for what's possible in this beautiful facility here and what's possible on your main street that has the wonderful shops where I'm hoping to find a beautiful dress tomorrow. And in Newbern and all the communities that are surrounding. We are all very blessed, and I believe we are privileged to be here in rural North Carolina in the eastern part of the state. And I thank you for the opportunity to be with you tonight on this inaugural event, and hope to have a chance to come back for another conversation at another time. Thank you. So, Crystal, thank you.
Okay. I told Michelle she could sit wherever she wanted. Thank you so much for that monologue and for sharing that information with us. I want to thank all of you again for being here tonight. It starts small sometimes. And what we're doing here at the North Carolina History Center and here at Tryon Palace is that we are trying to set the groundwork, the foundational groundwork for continued community engagement and education here at the North Carolina History Center. So I just want to say thank you again for all of you for being here tonight. I think it's great that it's a small number. We can be intimate, we can ask questions, and we can have the conversations that we need to have. So thank you, Secretary Machelle Baker Sanders. I want to also mention that she was the Secretary of Administration prior to being the Secretary of Commerce, so she has served this state nobly and well. So I just want to thank you for being here tonight and for all that you have done to serve the state of North Carolina and for the amazing representation of Eastern North Carolina. One of the challenges that I was given when I came here as the executive director was to promote and pronounce the amazing history that is Eastern North Carolina history. And we're going to do that. We're going to do that through programming. We're going to do that through exhibitions. And we're going to do that through community engagement and education. So the next few minutes, what I'd like to do is ask Secretary Sanders a few questions, piggybacking on what she has shared with you all. And I hope that she'll share something with us that is not on the internet, that is just privy to this intimate group, and that she'll just let her hair down and talk to us very raw and real about what it means to be a woman leader in North Carolina, in the South, and what it means to set the stage for so many generations to come. So my first question, I should say, is if you could talk a little bit more about your personal and professional experiences, and if you could sort of outline for us the trajectory in terms of your leadership that led you to be a secretary, whether it be in administration or in commerce. If you could lay that out for us, I think that would be great.
Sure. So I mentioned to you that I went to elementary through high school in Bath, North Carolina. I grew up in Belhaven. My parents, my father is deceased, but my mother's still living. They were retired educators and very engaged and involved in our community in Belhaven, Bath, and Pantego area. So I grew up observing parents who poured into others and who gave a lot. My mom, a retired second grade teacher, still spells sometimes. And I'm like, Mom, everybody can spell here now. Well, it's all good. You don't have to spell. She's 88, still spells some things. But they love the profession, love serving others, and found joy in that. And I grew up and observed that type of servant leadership and community engagement. And I think at a very early age, that was just something that was ingrained in me, the good that's in that, which is why I think that I'm so attracted and committed to service. and serving others. I have always been a curious child. I've always been the one that talked out of turn in class. My report cards, I was a good student, but my behavior, conduct would always say she talks out of turn or she needs help.
You got your name on the board.
Yeah.
The checks.
Yeah. And I can remember my dad saying, which this is something on there, that Machelle, any child can sit in class and be quiet. And so, but that curiosity also, I think, helped and led me into being curious enough and an interest enough in the STEM space. And somewhere along the way, enough confidence to believe that I could do it. As females, and as a young girl many times, and you guys may have heard of Sheryl Sandberg's book, Lean In, and talk about the difference in raising young boys versus young girls. And sometimes that lack of confidence in ourselves, which carries over to the lack of confidence of maybe thinking you can do math or science, something you typically see more males and boys be successful at, helped and bode well for me. But going into NC State, where I started in chemical engineering and realized that was not for me into biochemistry, it was still a minority, not many women in that space, and definitely not women of color in that space. But what I found out later, after school and in my career, that the very thing that was different for me and the very difference that I brought to any room or any situation was also my strength and was also what I could leverage to have a positive outcome and a positive impact. If you think about your abilities, and for so long I focused more on my weaknesses, I think, what I was told about weaknesses, and trying to get those up to speed, realizing I was not getting too proficient on a lot of those things. And then one day somebody said, why don't you just focus on what you're really good at? Which made it a lot easier. And so I was like, yeah, why don't I? Just focus on the things that you see as your strength. And most of the time, the one unique strength that you have is unique. Nobody's going to be able to mimic it. And it is the thing that can help put you on a different playing field, I'd say. And so in those situations where I was the only female, that was my strength. In those situations where I was the only one that loved jewelry and makeup and all that, that artistic side of me became my strength. And in the place where you may think of solving a problem, you know, when we're younger, if your child, you're told, draw a circle to the right or draw to the right, and the child draws to the left, we correct them. We say, oh, follow the directions. I realize sometimes that's not a bad thing, to find your own way, right? And to be creative or innovative about how you get there. You're still going to draw a circle, you're just doing it a different way. Not to be disrespectful to teachers or adults who are telling you to follow directions. But so what I have found is that the things that I have focused in on, that I have leveraged, and that I have tried to become better at have been things that I felt that were my strengths and things that really set me apart from others. And to remember that those things are good things, and there again, to be comfortable in your own skin, because there is no one else in the world that is just like you. And so no one else in the world is going to bring things to the table just like you, or has the exact same knowledge and intellect you do. And hopefully you're in a place that you'll be appreciated for your uniqueness and for what you bring and what you have to offer to society, or to the problem, to the solution, to whatever the situation is. So hopefully that answered the question and you guys got it.
Thank you.
And I tell my daughters the same thing, something you guys don't know that I'll slide in. I'm the mother of twin daughters, and I have raised my daughters and told them the same thing, and hopefully they listen. I find about 80% of the time they do. So
80%?
Maybe 80.
Well, so I think my next question for you, you're looking at two women. I'm a humanities person. I believe in civic engagement. I believe in history, learning our history. My question for you, Michelle, would be, what sort of recommendation do you have for young women who are struggling to decide what path they should take? If they are inclined to be sort of a STEM focused, but they have an activist or a historical sort of mindset, how do they marry the two? And what recommendations would you give for young people who are trying to sort out, I'm STEM focused, but I care about my country. I care about my planet. I care about making sure that if I have children or grandchildren, that there will be a place for them. How do people marry the humanities as well as a STEM-focused career?
Yeah. I think that it's important first to realize that there is so much of an interdependency in all of that. I enjoy the interrelationship between science, policy, ethics, and art included. And so I think being able to hone in what you're really good at, but not to limit yourself or box yourself in. I'm a biochemist by education, and I'm the Secretary of Commerce. Some people will be like, that doesn't really add up and make a lot of sense, but it does, because I use my problem-solving skills that I learned in science and engineering or whatever. I also use those same skills from industry to interact with businesses. I use those skills to understand how the economy is working and what the economic impact may be, what's the greatest return on investment for our state when it comes to businesses, and then to, be reliable in and a good steward of taxpayer dollars. You need to understand and know what the statutes are, the policies are, and to be able to work with the legislature to get the buy-in and support for various work or appropriations. And then, the people piece is integrated into all of that. So I think many times we limit ourselves by our discipline and our function, only to realize maybe later in life that you can do so much more. And I think now those disciplines are very interdependent, if you will. I remember my daughter's graduation in she's a political science undergrad major. The professor said, if you're a political science major and people ask you what you're going to do with that, which is exactly what her sister said, Mom, what is she going to do with that? And at the graduation, he said, you tell them you can do anything you want to do with that. And that is the truth of it. You can do anything you want to do. I think that those other disciplines or the humanities are foundational, and that there's information, expertise that you can learn that you can transfer over across into other areas, into other fields. I'm not going to be an astronaut or become an astronaut, but I think that there's an opportunity. So I would encourage people to go with what their interest is and what gives them energy, but to realize that you don't have to stay in that place forever, and to get outside of your steep and deep expertise. Put yourself out there to be on other teams that will give you a cross-functional experience or put you in a different place. Because most of the time, if you all had similar experience I have, sometimes the solutions don't come from the experts on your team that worked with you. Sometimes it comes from people who are prodding and asking questions and have less deep knowledge of the situation than maybe others, because those questions help you to think through on problems and solutions in a different way. So that is what I would recommend. And I am someone who has taken a different pathway. And when I leave this role, who knows what I'll do next? It may be something totally different. It won't be in history, though.
Anyway,
We really love it. And
thank you. That's an excellent response. I think the next question is, I want to get very specific in terms of region, and everybody in here is either living in or close to Eastern North Carolina. And so Eastern North Carolina is really important, I would argue, to everybody sitting in this audience. Can you talk to us a little bit about what opportunities are out there through the Department of Commerce that business folks, whether it be the chamber and their partners, whether it be, any other sort of state entities could take advantage of right now to expound upon what they're already working on, whether it be grants or any other sort of financial, undergirding to make sure we are being the very best that we can be in Eastern North Carolina. So there are folks from different backgrounds sitting out here. What does the Department of Commerce have to offer? And I know that there are things on the website that talk about grants and initiatives, but can you speak specifically to the East?
Yeah.
And talk about what there is out here for us to make sure that we're building on what those foundations might be.
Yeah. There are things on the website. Our Rural Infrastructure Authority has a toolbox of grants and programs that are available, whether that is renovating a building or offering support for the renovation of a building for a startup business, or whether that is small business grant. We also have our NC Innovation grant, which I believe rural North Carolina can definitely tap into. I mentioned the Main Street program that offers not only technical capacity building and local planning and development for many of our small rural towns in Eastern North Carolina and across the state for that matter, that can help with planning and zoning and various services there. Our Rural Center, which is not in Commerce, also is an excellent resource for small businesses or for startup businesses in North Carolina. The Science, Technology, and Innovation Organization, which is in Commerce, offers small business grants across the state, but surely rural North Carolina can tap into that. Now, tourism has come back strong, which is a great thing. And I believe that through our tourism group at the Economic Development Partnership in North Carolina and Commerce, there is also capacity building, training, and grants that can be offered, including in workforce development. North Carolina has workforce boards across the state, including in the eastern region of the state. And so they receive some funds from Commerce to those workforce boards. They also receive some funds through our tourism pool of funding, if you will, to help with workforce development in the tourism business and space. So there are a lot of resources that are available. We also have had a large number, I don't want to misquote the number of job announcements in rural and eastern North Carolina. But even if they're not, you all remember the big announcement we had. Apple is companies like Apple that are also paying into our education system across the state, which includes rural North Carolina. So those are things that you can tap into, and you can also reach out to my office for additional information and support if we can guide you on that. I know that there are a number of federal funds that have come about through the IRA, the Reduction Act under the Biden administration, that have been available for communities across the state, but Eastern and Western North Carolina have been fortunate enough to really tap into those funds for small businesses and startup, because our small businesses struggled, as you know, pretty big, in a big way during the pandemic. Many have not opened or reopened, but there are resources and funds available to try to help stand up more businesses and how to keep and to help those us stay afloat. So if there's more questions on that, please reach out to our office. My email's online, or you can call Commerce, and we'd be glad to help direct you to some assistance and services that are available.
Okay, thank you. We're running out of time. My last question for you before I want to open up to the audience, because we do want to make sure we give people the opportunity to ask a couple of questions to the secretary. I'm big on advice and practical advice. So there's a two-part question I have for you. The first part is, what was the most prolific advice you were given as a young woman prior to moving into whether it be STEM or biotechnology sort of career trajectories? And what advice would you give for the current generation? So let's do this chronologically. What advice were you given that stuck with you, that helped you move to the position that you're in now? And what advice would you give for young people who are moving into leadership, whether it's the humanities or STEM or public service? So can you talk a little bit about that?
You all, I think, have heard me state it probably a few times, and that is, be comfortable in your own skin. And that advice was given to me by a mentor over 25 years ago, I believe. And that stuck with me, resonated with me, and it actually empowered me. And so that advice was just really meaningful advice for me that I have held on to and continue to do so and remind myself. For someone possibly going into a leadership role, of course, I would share that piece of information, but I would say be authentic, be true to who you are in all situations and environments, and be a person of your word, because that is hard to find these days, and probably has been hard to find prior to these days. So be true to who you are, be authentic, and keep your word. If you can't keep your word, don't give your word. And I think that is the advice I would give. And I think with saying that, what that garners and fosters is a culture where people can feel that they can be at their best. You can create trust, and trust is important in any healthy organization. And I believe that it also allows you to model in a way, that you hopefully want other people to model similar or the same. If you have to pretend to be something that you're not, one, you're going to fail for sure somewhere along the way. It's very hard to flip and switch that many times, I think, though some people are experts at it. And secondly, why give your word and mislead and break trust if you know when you're making the statements you're making that, one, you cannot keep your word, or that it's not true, or that you're speaking from a place of malintent and not a place of good intention. And so I think that is very important for a leader, and very important for others to realize, what you're about, who you're about. And I think we all start from a good place, and want good for others. And I believe that we all have good in us, and that's what we want to come out, is the good. So it just takes some people a little more thought maybe to do that. I was making a speech at the breakfast. I believe it was a TBJ breakfast, and I think it seemed like I was really nervous or something, and this person at the table said, honey, just be yourself. And I thought, well, okay, because I'm going to do that. If I don't do that, I'm going to fail big time. But I did say, thank you, you're right. I just need to be myself. And that's really the easiest thing for all of us, it should be, is to be ourselves.
You're from Eastern North Carolina, Belhaven. What aspect, and this is really the last question, before we jump to the audience. What aspect of Eastern North Carolina are you most proud of? And I want to ask that question because we are living in a global society, right? Where we're trying to figure out things as a nation. Globally, there are lots of things that are happening that have a lot of young people questioning and in turmoil. But what would you say to someone who is a young person or even an older person from Eastern North Carolina? What about Eastern North Carolina are you most proud of? I think will be a good way to end this conversation.
So I am most proud of, and you may have realized I would say this, of the people of Eastern North Carolina. Speaking of history, when you think about our history and where we have come from, and we surely have a long ways to go, and where we are today, and how we have transformed perceptions of Eastern North Carolina and transformed the economy in Eastern North Carolina, but yet held on to what has really stood out for us and made us great, like the Bill's hot dogs in Washington, North Carolina, and the Andes and the Hardee's and all of that, and the potholes and the trailers and everything else that all together makes up Eastern North Carolina. We are a community and a place that is rich with beauty. We are rich with, personality, the warmth that you can't find in another part of this state. And I do believe that, even though North Carolina's got it, its own personality. So I am really proud of the people of Eastern North Carolina, and we are survivors. Our population is shrinking in many towns of Eastern North Carolina, but the spirit in those towns remain the same. The spirit in those towns remain the same. The spirit in the heart of the people remains the same. Does Belhaven have less of the downtown shops than it had when I was growing up? Yes. But when I walk in downtown, they still know who I am. They still buy me a coffee when I'm across the street for my birthday, and I get there and it's already paid for, and I don't know who bought it of the 3 places on Main Street in Belhaven, but somebody bought it. They still appreciate, respect the pleasantries of hello, how are you doing? And to me, that is special. And so I am most proud of the people of Eastern North Carolina and what it has offered me and what it has provided me, because I would not be where I am without Eastern North Carolina and the people in Belhaven, Bath, Pantigga, that whole area, Washington, Beaufort County, basically. And so that is what I am most proud of. And that's why most people, if not all that work with me, know that I am straight out of Belhaven. Everybody knows that, including the governor. No one's allowed to talk about Belhaven or Eastern North Carolina. So that is what I am most proud of. And I think that we can be so much more. We can do so much more together and in helping each other, being engaged in our community, being engaged in our political arena, if you will, that's going on, being informed and attentive to who's running, what their interests are, how are they going to benefit Eastern North Carolina or not, how are they going to benefit the people, our families, our schools, our children, and who is going to stand for Eastern North Carolina and the future of Eastern North Carolina. Those questions need to be asked and vetted, and I think then we will come up with the best decisions and the voting and best decisions that are going to carry us forward. But our engagement and our voices lifted is very important. Some people may have written off Eastern North Carolina, for that matter, but we are survivors, and we're still here, and we still have a lot of great things, and we're still attracting a lot of tourism to our communities because of that, and repeat visitors because of that. And so I'm very proud as a Eastern North Carolinian and proud of the people of Eastern North Carolina. I can't think of anything else to be more proud of. Can you all?
All right.
That's what makes us who we are. That's what
Yes.
makes us special. I think I mentioned in one interview something about the rural Eastern sauce, and I think I must have been just saying, they said, what is the rural Eastern sauce? I was like, I don't know, but I have just, it's the rural Eastern sauce.
Yeah.
And so you all too should be very proud and show that pride through the work that you do, how we treat each other, how we care for each other, and how we make sure that our Eastern North Carolina towns remain and stand as just that, a place that many people call home.
Okay. Thank you, Secretary Sanders.
Thank you.
For joining us. So we're going to close out tonight. I want to ask that you please look to Tryon Palace and the North Carolina History Center for your community engagement, history lessons, and edutainment. We want to thank Secretary Sanders for her time. She's been on quite a busy schedule coming in from Charlotte to come in and just talk with us. And again, I'm grateful for this crowd. This is our first program for In Conversation. We're elated that the folks who came here tonight came, and we hope that we will continue to grow this program as well as other series that will be coming to the North Carolina History Center, including community class and colonial cocktails. So please look at our website for continued information about how we're going to engage the community for history education. Please hang out for the next 20 minutes in Maddox Hall for our reception for Secretary Sanders. Thank you so much for joining us. And if you could make your way to Maddox Hall, that would be awesome. Thank you so much.